I want to hold you to a close scrutiny of this phrase, which I think is a real shocker, and you must have intended it to be a shocker. Most Muslims are utterly deranged by their religious faith. I've even heard you back off a little bit now. You went from most to some significant subset.
Well, no, let me just make it clear. I'm not backing off of that, because utterly deranged by the. I mean, I set the bar rather low for utter derangement. I mean, by my lights, thinking that the Quran is the best book ever written on any subject, really, is getting you pretty close to derangement. Thinking that that someone should be killed for criticizing it, or that it's a real problem that cartoonists caricature the Prophet Muhammad and they should be kidnapped. That this is the kind of treading upon the sanctities of the religion is a real social problem that demands more energy in its criticism than suicide bombing. That, I think, is a kind of derangement that is immensely widespread, and we shouldn't minimize it. The thing, however, the thing I don't know, and which is a place where I think Reza and I will actually have a meeting of the minds, is I don't know. I mean, it's perfectly clear to me that my style of conversation is not what can be broadcast to the Muslim world to change people's minds. I mean, that is your job. You are much better suited for that job. And I would agree with you that in order to empower the moderates of the Muslim world, drawing cartoons of the Prophet and writing paragraphs of the sort I've written is not a strategy. I'm not a diplomat. And I don't know, but what's troubling me is I don't know where the line is between encouraging moderation, representing what Islam could be. You know, Islam could be a religion of peace, perhaps. Jihad could be just an inner spiritual struggle and have nothing to do with holy war. Indeed, that we have to raise a generation of Muslims who believe those things. But pretending that it is already is problematic, because it isn't for so many millions of Muslims. And it may be that if you pretend hard enough, in fact, you become what you pretend to be, and maybe that's part of the process. But I think we have to admit to ourselves that we are confronting the behavior of a death cult among millions and millions of Muslims, not 10,000 who went to training camps in Afghanistan. We are confronting an endorsement of this kind of behavior and a reflexive political solidarity where Muslims side with other Muslims, no matter how sociopathic their behavior, simply because they're other Muslims. We can't deny the problem while trying to encourage a more benign face of the religion.
I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from, Sam, and I certainly, as we've talked in our many other conversations, do respect your intellectualism. But there's a reason why I don't write books about neuroscience, because I don't have an expertise in neuroscience. I write books about what's going on in the Muslim world because I have an expertise in what's going on in the Muslim world. I actually travel through the Muslim world. I study the Muslim world. I understand the conversations that are taking place. And so I feel like, in a sense, I'm in a better position to sort of make judgments about what sort of socio or religious or political developments are taking place within this people of 1.5 billion a number. Statements like there are millions of Muslims who have this sort of death cult are profoundly inaccurate and are based on nothing except your sort of general impression of a region and of a religion that you have a very surface understanding of.
Well, it's not. For instance, in the End of Faith, I cite these Pew polls that were done in 9 Muslim countries, actually not the most radicalized. And the most radicalized countries wouldn't let the polling be done. But even in Turkey, the Muslim success story on many fronts, the level of support for suicide bombing against non-combatants in defense of the faith was shocking. I mean, you just run the numbers. When 77% of people in Lebanon say that it is justified that's, it's not a minority. It's not even close to a minority. Even if it were only 5% of the Muslim world that was radicalized by my lights, that is still a problem we have to talk about soberly. I mean, we're talking about 75 million people.
Certainly, and I don't think anybody would say that that's not a conversation that we need to talk about. But
it's a civilizational problem that is not amenable to simply saying that Islam is a religion of peace.
I don't understand what Islamic civilization means. I mean, I don't.
I'm talking about the global civilization.
Oh, I see. I think, look, the issue here, of course, as you mentioned before, is how do you go about addressing a very serious problem that is taking place, not just in the Muslim world, but throughout the world. I mean, both of those comments that the difference between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is that Judaism, Christianity have gone through some sort of reform, and so that it's tempered its violent aspects, and Islam hasn't. Both of those statements are false. I don't find any kind of tempering in the extremism with which Christianity or Judaism deals with the issue. The sole, or not sole, but certainly the most significant factor in the way that one understands one's religion, the way one interprets one's religion, is not what the religion itself, it's your social context. So we apparently forgot about the 80s and the movement of liberation theology in Latin America, a very Catholic, deeply Christian conception of Jesus as warrior, in which priests themselves were forced to take up arms in the name of the liberator Jesus. And murder opponents in that sense. Very few people, I think, would have blamed Catholicism or Christianity upon those things. We talk about the social political structure of a region when we deal with the conflicts that arise out of that region. So again, from our position here in the United States, 70%, 80% Christian, something to that effect, an incredibly affluent society. If you're a Christian living in, let's say, Los Angeles, your idea of who Jesus is, of what Jesus means, is profoundly different than if you're a Christian living in the hills of Guatemala. If you're a Muslim living in Los Angeles, your conception of Islam as a religion of peace, as a religion that prescribes, peacefulness and tolerance and pluralism, that's going to be vastly different than if you're a Muslim living in a garbage heap in Gaza. So it's not just simply verbal sophistry to say that there are much more significant aspects that define one's political or social views, that lead one to even acts of violence, than just merely religion. Religion does not explain solely why someone decides to strap a bomb to themselves and kill combatants or non-combatants, however it would be. And it's I think a profoundly simplistic way of thinking about not just religion, but about these social conflicts themselves.